Okay, I know you had to go to class, and yet I still want to show you Social Explorer. So my intention is to have a webinar on demographic mapping, and we'll figure out a good time and date for that. So it'll just be an optional open webinar for the NYT community. Anyone can join, and if you want to join, feel free to join at that time. So what we're going to do here is I'm starting from LibGuide's nyit.edu community. So in our class, we looked at architecture tools. We also looked at find books and find articles, and we looked at census data and demographics. So yesterday, you should have received an email from Social Explorer with a pin, and this pin was for you to create your own Social Explorer account. I want to click on it right now because I want to show you how you can use Social Explorer to do some of your own research. So let me click and let me log into my Social Explorer account that I have here. See if we can log in quickly. So I want for you, if you have one homework item from my point of view, I would love for you to have an account to Social Explorer, and you'll see why in a few seconds. So basically, Social Explorer is going to allow you to visually explore demographic information over time. So that's important. When you look at the census, it's unfortunate, but it only goes back to 2000. And sometimes in comparing over time, you want a narrative, you're trying to develop a story with these maps, and Social Explorer allows you to do that. So from here, having logged in, I'm going to click on Explore. And from Explore, we don't want to do the tour. The first thing that you want to do when you log into Social Explorer, you want to search for something, right? You want to search for, and that something's a location. So right here, I'm going to click up here, and I could search for, it could be anything. So let's just search for the zip code where I'm located. I mean, I could search for Queens County, right? Let's search for Queens. See if they do Queens, New York. See if it recognizes. It could very well have been easier taking a zip code route. I'm just waiting to pre-populate our search result here, and it doesn't want to. All right, we'll just click on search then. There we go. So we've searched for a zip code in the city of New York, right? It's our very first search for a zip code. I could have put in an address, etc. And the way it's set up is that, if I mouse over, it's going to provide me with information pertaining to data that's located up here in the top left corner. So what I want to do, I'll just give you an example. So right here, this zip code that I searched, well, what I might want to do is save this annotation. So I'm saving that blue box, and then that blue box, if I want, I can click View List, and I could change how it appears, right? It's going to get more interesting. You'll see where this goes, but right, I might say instead of green, let's just have that appear black, clicking Done, and then guess what? I have an annotation here for that particular zip code within New York City. And when you look here at these different boxes, it's on hover. I'm going to put it on click in the bottom left-hand corner. I'm going to click. So right here, it's set to on click. Now, what I want to do immediately is click Change Data. And if you remember the conversation that we had pertaining to census, data.census.gov, what's very important is the data that we choose. And we normally want to choose 5-year estimates. Right? Those 5-year estimates will give us information at the tract, census tract, and block level. Tract being 4,000 to 8,000 people, block level being 600 to 3,500 people. So here we are. We're on the ACS 5-year, right? I could click down and I have different, if I wanted a historical perspective, but let's just go with the recent 5-year estimate. Right, let me click out, click back, 5-year estimate 2018. Now right here, I have population density. Right? And it could be that I want information pertaining to, well, now that we have 5-year tract, let's just go back to category and let's check income. And then for that income area, right, we might say, I want households whose income is less than $15,000, right? And then let's click out of that. So immediately what I have here, I have households whose income is less than $15,000 for a zip code that's annotated in New York City, right? And when I click on this, these are the different tracks, right? We're looking at the tract level, right? Sometimes here you can switch, and if you want to, you can go to the census block group level, right? And you'll see how that's automatically changed right here. So let's zoom in here, right? And then if I wanted to, I mean, there's some other things you can do. So an example would be if I click on, you know, this particular block group, rather, I've got the 28.4% of households in this particular area are making less than $15,000. But then perhaps I would want to annotate or something. So let's just click on the drop-down menu here, and then you'll notice I have different options. So I can create a tabled report that has the data, all of the tables for these block groups in this particular area. In addition, I might want to annotate. So if I click annotation, right, then what I could do here is I could say, well, you know, let's type in here. And what are we going to type? I'll just say Astoria, well, spell correctly again. Let's go, Sebastian. Astoria, New York, right? Perhaps that's my annotation that I want in that area. So let's just reposition that. We'll click done. And then let's say perhaps I wanted, in addition to where it says Astoria, I want to pinpoint something. So let's just go back. We'll click more options. We'll scroll down to annotate. We have maps and markers. You know, you could draw things, but in this case, you know, I could even put a picture, an image in here. So let's just put a place marker, and we'll say the place marker is in, click to highlight, and let's just say the place marker is in this particular location. We'll just add that place marker, and then we could have annotated that place marker, etc. So let's click done. So again, now once you have this, right, what you can do is when you click down here, export as image, right, you have all of these opportunities to export this as an image. Now, in addition to that, right, what you might want to do is you might want to change the data, and you can do so very quickly. So in addition to changing the color palette, so if I didn't like the style of the visualization, right, I could perhaps change it to something that I think is more appealing to me. So let's change that. And then in addition, I could change the data. So right now I'm looking at households whose earning is less than 15,000. And perhaps if I go back to all data, right, 15,000, what? Let's go to categories. Let's back up on the categories. And perhaps what we can say is, you know, we can take a look at poverty, and we could say income below the poverty level, and then we can click out. So again, I'm looking at American Community Surveys information for the year 2018, a 5-year estimate for this particular zip code within Astoria. All right, now one other pretty cool thing I think about this, I'm going to actually show you a couple of cool things, but one cool thing is that when I do go here to more options, I don't know if anyone saw this, you know, map layers. We have this map layers area, and I could, if I wanted to have a satellite view of this particular area, there are a few things that I can toggle down here if I want to take streets on and off, buildings on and off. But in addition, you have a layer library. And if you look at the layer library, right, we can look at the descriptions, but I have flood zones, and these flood zones are sourced to FEMA. I have high, medium, low, and if I wanted to, let's go back, I could add those flood zones to the map. So let's quickly add them, right? And now let's close this out. Wait a few seconds. So now you have flood zones as applied to the area. And you can see based on the map, I mean, I have my particular area here, but if I go down to, say, this area, so again, you have Randall's Island, this is Queens, the borough of Queens, right? And within Queens, this is Long Island City and Astoria. But what you notice in this area, right, you have this one area here where 87.5% of the families are classified, based on the American Community Survey, as living below poverty level, so in this area. So this is, in terms of demographic mapping, this is pretty great, right? Now I want to do a brand new search. I want to take you out of this search, and I want to show you a search pertaining to population. So let's just go back here. We're going to click on Explore, right? Which is typically the first thing that we want to do, is click Explore. And I want to actually try searching for a location. Let's just try, see if it does accept Queens, New York. Oh, there you go. Notice how it has Queens as a place. We want the county, Queens County, right? And there we have Queens County as a place. So here we go. Okay, so now what I'm going to do, and again, just so you know, you have Staten Island, you have, here, you have Manhattan, the borough of Manhattan. You see this Central Park right here. You have Brooklyn. So Brooklyn is Kings County, rather. Queens, you have the Bronx. Sometimes this is referred to, and an example would be in the census. If you're looking for Manhattan, sometimes they'll call it New York County. It's very strange and odd, but that's the case. So we're looking at this. Now, what I wanted to show you is down on the right here, if I click on this map view, I could have a side-to-side view where I'm comparing two different maps, right? In addition to that, what I could do is I could have a swipe view where I'm swiping over time, right? So if you ask, well, why would you want to swipe over time? Well, one thing that you can do is you can have here, we can change the data, right? And we could say, what year do you want? What data source? So let's just go data source. Let's scroll down. And let's just say we want information from the census, the 2010 census. And let's go back here, categories. And we could try by, let's find a category. We'll go by race. And we will try white alone, black, Asian. And we'll try Amerindian. We'll just keep it here. Now, the other thing to keep in mind is that Asian, if you ask an American, statistically, you know, whom they feel are Asian, they might not include South Asians, right? Maybe they include Southeast Asians, but they don't include South Asians. Do they include Taiwan? Do they? So it's interesting. In terms of the census, South Asians are included in the Asian category, so just keep that in mind. So here's one of our maps, and we're going to click out. And then, you know, the other thing to keep in mind is we have a shaded area. We could have dot density if we wanted to, right? So this is our dot density. And then in terms of the dot density, we could also define, you know, how many dots. Let me see on the side, they don't have. We could define on the dot density how many dots right here pertain to the individuals, so we could change this depending on the setting, right, if we wanted to. But let's stay with shaded area. I think in this case it works out. So let's go to our other one, and what we're going to do here is click Change Data, right? We actually want to draw from the current, the 2018, right? So we're already set up here, the 2018. Let's go to categories. Let's go back to race. And we're comparing apples to apples and apples to oranges. So in this case, we're going to grab the same segments. We're going to click close. And let's zoom in a bit. So what you can see here is over time, you can see what happens to a community over time, right? Which I think is quite powerful. So is that, well, I'm not so crazy. This is the 2018 5-year estimate. We want to change that data. I'm not sure why that didn't take the data, why it reset. Let's see if this sticks here. I just want to make sure that stays to 2010. Okay, so here we go. This is better. So we have the 2010 American Community Survey 5-year estimate. And over here we have the ACS 5-year 18, right? And we're going to zoom in on, I guess we could take this kind of portion of Queens, or Long Island City for that matter, but we can see what happens over time in that particular area. So you can see, you know, for example, in this area right here that I'm mousing over, so this would include areas of Jackson Heights and you're going to find a lot of South Asians, you're going to find a lot of Southeast Asians, a lot of Thai, etc. But you can see over time, you know, what happens to that area, and you have an increase. And we could click on any of these, of course, and then you would see the total population Asian alone in this tract. Remember, tracts are between optimally 4,000 to 8,000 people. You have Asian alone are 45% of the people in that particular tract. And then if we swipe to the other side, then, you know, that very well may have changed in a difference. So it was 39%. So this is great. So I think from this perspective, right, using the swipe on the right hand side, you have this historical component, right? So now once again, when you click change data, I'm going to go to single view right here, single view. And I want to, you know, just basically show you that when you click change data, you have different approaches. So one approach would be to choose categories and have a year associated with them. So these are the categories: income, unmarried, education. I think one education is to look at is less than high school. You know, that can be quite interesting to look at. But you have all of these categories that you can choose. And then in addition, you have data sources. Okay, so one more point I want to make. So I did, prior to the class, send everyone a Social Explorer code to start their own account. So if you look in your NYIT email, you would have received a code yesterday evening, the 21st of October, New York Eastern Central Time. So probably around 8 p.m. You should have a code from Social Explorer to start your own account. That's important. If you do not have a code, you can email me at smarion@nyit.edu. Now, what I wanted to say is that when you change data, and I just learned something new here, but when you change data, if you want to search for a topic, so here we can click in the Academic Community Survey 5-year estimates, which is, you know, those 5 years are quite valuable. We can compare decennial census over 10-year periods. But if I wanted something about poverty, I will see the tables that are assigned to poverty. If I wanted something about income, I can topic keyword search for particular tables. Now, if there's a particular table from the census that I want, if you look at data set here, data set, right? If I take the data set, I've noticed there are Social Explorer tables, right? They're table conversions, which allow them to generate these visual experiences when we're telling stories with maps. In addition, right, I could look at the American Community Survey tables. And why would I want to do this? Because maybe there's a table, and I did mention this table in our conversation pertaining to census in the class, but maybe a table like 03002, Hispanic rather, Latino and race, maybe I want to look at mapping that particular table of information, right? So here's the table ID number. The important thing, if you're searching by table ID number, then keep in mind there are these different data sets. So I think what's happened is in the Social Explorer tables, obviously you're not going to get the same table identifiers, because they've adjusted the information to suit their purposes. So, and you know what happens when you have this table information, and you know you've enumerated this data, and then you have to express it in the form of rows and columns. And so Social Explorer has deemed it useful to change the tables to provide you with these narrative visual experiences. So the last thing I want to say to you, this is the last thing I want to say. When you go to the dashboard, if you look under stories, right, you can have maps. So I have some maps that I've created here, but in addition to that, you can create stories, right? So a story, right, is a series of maps that includes a narrative. So I have these different maps here, and in addition, I have a link that I can share to these maps. And well, I don't have in my particular story, I don't have text that supports, I don't have a narrative that tells a story, but this is a kind of link that you can show, and you can go through a series of maps, right? So I could have had a block of text information here that explains in more detail what this particular map's about, but here I have total population of New York, and I could keep scrolling through. So these are just different maps that I've created. So total population of 18 to 34-year-olds, 34 to 64, so you get an idea of where the young people are living, where the older people are living in New York City. And I'll just take you through a few of these maps. Population 25 years or over, less than high school, so you see the more you could say impoverished areas. Here's a map that shows you racial segregation, so you have the areas that are black, the areas you see Chinatown down here. So you can just tell a story with these particular maps. And I think the easy thing to do, to be honest, would be to click on Social Explorer, and if you go to Teach and Learn, this Teach and Learn section, they will give you some examples of stories that they are telling with these maps. So diversity in US City, here's a good one. You'll notice that there's typically a shared public link, and you have a description of the map. So here's the info that you have that supports the map, and then you can just click over time and tell a story. So it's very similar to ArcGIS when you telling a narrative, telling a story using the map representation, but you're doing this with Social Explorer. So whether or not you find that interesting, I do not know. So the last thing, we'll just go back to NYIT community research, just putting in those keywords, and then it's it looks like it's the second link here. And so this is from where we began, from whence we started, right? I would advise you to click on some of these links, familiarize yourself with what's going on here. Primarily, we looked at census data and demographics and Social Explorer right now. In the class, we looked at architecture, find books, find articles. The other thing, you have some Google tips here that I think are quite useful. And now the most important thing, I don't know, if you want to send me an email, click here. If you want to schedule an appointment with me to talk about any of these issues, you could just pick a date and pick a time, and you can schedule an appointment with me. So that's it. Social Explorer, I think it's useful. It's proprietary, so I do advise you to have a relationship with data.census.gov, because this is a proprietary tool, but it's a fantastic tool for visual mapping, and I hope you do find it interesting.